Miss Bettye Quinn. How long have you been here?
This is 49 years.
So just a few days. She's been here just a few days. 49 years of being in the education department and teaching here at Belhaven. Yeah, that deserves a round of applause. So I told you guys this morning I thought this was going to be a real treat for you during training, much better than a campus tour and learning the history that way. But Miss Quinn has been here, 49 years. So all that history and the changes of Belhaven, and we're continuing to change, obviously, each year. But she is going to tell us just Belhaven's story from start until today. And she does it really creatively, and love her humor, too. She's always funny and has lots of good stories for us. So if y'all will just welcome her and just give her your attention. Again, just cell phones off, especially because we're going to video, so we have this a long time to come. But thank you, Ms. Quinn, for doing this for us.
You're welcome. We want to welcome you all to Belhaven. Often I'm asked to tell different groups the history of Belhaven, and Dr. Parrott once introduced me and said Belhaven's 131 years old. Miss Quinn's been here most of that time, but I hadn't. But I do know about it, so that's what we're going to tell you. I usually have some slides with pictures, but our department has been moving, and so I didn't have those out. So I just made you these sheets with some great big numbers on them so that we could think about numbers. You know, they always think it's important to know all the numbers of everything. So we're going to give you the special numbers of Belhaven. So as we start off, you're going to see that Belhaven came from 3 institutions. There was the Belhaven College here in Jackson, the Macomb Female Institute in Macomb, and the Mississippi Synodical College in Holly Springs. And those 3 schools merged and became what is now Belhaven. And several years ago, Belhaven College became Belhaven University. But we came from those 3 roots. But we became a college for 3 special purposes. And I wrote those for you. The first one is the Christian World and Life View. And all of you who've been here know that you do have some courses you take that talk about the Christian World and Life View. It's one of our special purposes of having Belhaven. And because of that, we also have chapel. Now, when I was a student here, we had chapel every day, Monday through Friday. And then when I came back to teach, we had chapel 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday. But now you just have chapel 1 day a week, which is on a Tuesday. But this is an important part for us together as a group and to hear outstanding people. And you will get to hear, and we have heard all these years from the most outstanding leaders in the Christian faith have come here to Belhaven to speak to us. So that's a part of our Christian root. And you also have other groups. Some of you are aware of those. The Reformed University Fellowship meets, and your Student Mission Fellowship, and some other groups. So we have that root. And then the next thing that we have at Belhaven that's real important, you'll notice, is our Scottish background. Our name Belhaven is from Scottish, and it means beautiful home. And we like to welcome people to Belhaven and say we hope that you will consider this your home forever now that you're a student. And then when you've graduated and are an alumni, this will be your alma mater, which means our mother. So it is we hope will be a beautiful home to you. Our first building was a big antebellum mansion, and that was its name. In those days, all the big mansions had names, and that was the name of that huge mansion that was here on Boyd Street, was Belhaven. But because it was the home of Colonel Hamilton, who was a Scottish man, we kept the Scottish theme, and so you will see at every one of our formal occasions we have the bagpipes playing, and we use the Scottish names in most things, like the tartan, would be our magazine. And one time our sports teams were called clans. And that's because in Scotland, groups of people are called a clan, spelled C-L-A-N. But because we were in the South, some people, when they would hear the word clan, thought, well, they just didn't know how to spell it. And so in the 1970s, Belhaven did not continue as the Klansmen or the Klans ladies. We had these teams. we became the Blazers. And so Blazers is not as Scottish as Clan is, but it's better for us. So now we are the Blazers. It was, unusual in those days to see a lot of black boys playing with a sign that said the Klansman. But so we thought we would have to change that. But other than that, we've kept our Scottish roots. And then because Belhaven is here in the middle of Mississippi in the deep south, many of our things here have been very southern. And we've had, over the years, lots of things that are very particular to the southern culture. And so those are our three hit foundations for Belhaven. Now I put at the bottom that Belhaven was founded in 1883. You'll see that up on the signs. You want to know that Belhaven is 131 years old today. And we have survived 3 fires. The first fire was on that big antebellum mansion called Belhaven. It was on Boyd Street. It was struck by lightning, and the building burned. And so then they bought this piece of land where we are now on Peachtree Street and built another huge building in the shape of a U, but it was not like the antebellum mansion. And then it was struck by lightning and burned in the 1920s. And in fact, they said all is lost, Belhaven won't be here. But our president at the time was off at a school learning how to design a modern college. This is in the 1920s. And when they sent him the telegram that said all is lost, he thought, no, I've got a plan for a new building, a new campus. So he came, and the board said, we'll build it back. So they built back this. But they did build 2 wings that represented that first one, but they didn't make it a building going across. The cross part now is the lagoon. But to help us to remember that it was once one great big building, they have the columns there. You notice the columns of the lagoon. That was really where the columns were at the original building that burned there. And then you'll notice that we had a fire in 1976, and this was a real exciting fire. It was in our cafeteria, which was called Lancaster at the time, where the student union is. And their paper goods and paper plates and things caught on fire in the bottom of the building, and it just filled the building with smoke, and the firemen and everybody had to come. And it was raining like it was yesterday, just a storm. And everybody had to go out because the building was on fire, but it was also raining. But what made it interesting is that we were being evaluated by the Southern Association for our accreditation. And the accreditation team had to come out in the rain with their food because the building was on fire. And then the president took them to his house for supper to try to make up for that. And it had been raining all day, and his roof, water came in and flooded his den. So I just tell you this because Belhaven went through fire and flood, and we got a top-notch accreditation, which means the Lord just took care of us because it was, otherwise. So we hope we're through with the fires. Now, you have 3 kinds of buildings here. You'll notice as you walk around. Some of you have been walking around a long time and looking at them. And if you see the white buildings, these white buildings that are in the Greek Revival style were built by Dr. Gillespie in the 20s and 30s. And all of the white buildings that remain are buildings that were here when this was an all-girls school. And so that's Preston and Fitzhugh and Helen White and Raymond. There used to be some others, but they've been torn down and new ones have replaced them. Then you'll see the red brick buildings. And the first red brick building was this one. It was built in 1955, and it was built when the boys came. The boys came in 1954, and every building since then has been a red brick building. So I always like to think the boys added a lot of color to Belhaven because it's been these bland white buildings for that long. But if you'll notice, some of the buildings have green roofs on them, and those have been built since Dr. Parrott came. Or if they're off the campus, we have, off the main campus, we have acquired those since he came. So you now know, you can turn the corner up here at the Alumni House, and then we have the sports people are in what used to be the old Red Cross building that's going to be dedicated this fall and be called the Newt and Bettye Wilson building. And then we have the chapel. And we're hoping to get maybe one or two more buildings up that way. But there are going to be some new buildings built in the middle of the campus. And one is going to be a new dorm, and another is going to be an international building. And I assume they'll be red brick, to match these colors that we have here. Now, we've had 12 presidents at Belhaven, and if you go to the student union and you go back to the president's dining room, which you're only invited to if you're somebody real special, but maybe one day you'll get invited back there. You get invited back there when you graduate. And you'll see the portraits of 10 of the presidents hanging there. The first one is Dr. Fitzhugh. He was our first president, and we named a building for him. The second one was Dr. Preston. We named a building for him. Dr. Preston had also been the state superintendent of education for Mississippi. And when he was the president, he decided to give the reputation and the good name and the property of Belhaven to the Presbyterian Church, who then owned it until the middle of the 70s. And now Belhaven has a relationship with the Presbyterian churches, but we're not owned by them. But we were owned by them until that time, and that happened when Dr. Preston was here. And then he was followed by Dr. Lancaster, who we named a building for Dr. Lancaster, but then we tore it down. And so it was over there where the student union is now. It was just a straight brick building with a few tiny columns on the front, and it had the cafeteria on the bottom and the library on the top. And we could have left it there and done something, good with it, even though we were building a new cafeteria and a new library at the time. And while we were building the new library and the new cafeteria, we were having classes in Lancaster, and one day when I was teaching in Lancaster, the building just leaned over like that, and all the books fell off the shelves and all the trays fell off the table, but nobody was hurt. But it shifted on its foundation, but it didn't fall down. There must be a lesson in that. Anyway, if you have a good foundation, you don't fall down even though you shift. But they would not let us have classes in it anymore for fear that it would lean again. And so nothing was in there for 10 years. And so the students thought up all these stories about why nobody was in there. Like that something bad had happened in there, or that there were ghosts going in and out of Lancaster. And they would come and ask me about that, and I assured them nothing bad ever happened in Lancaster, and that there were no ghosts in Lancaster. We just couldn't go in there because we didn't think it was safe. Well, they tore it down, and then they built the Student Center. And when we had the opening of the Student Center, there was a piano in there playing by itself. And the people ran up to me and said, "Look, Miss Quinn, it is the ghost of Lancaster." So if you hear the player piano playing by yourself, you might want that tale, although it isn't true. Now, our next president was Dr. Frazier, and he was here only a year or two, so we didn't name anything for him. But he was followed by Dr. Gillespie, who stayed 33 years. And when he was the president, Belhaven owned all the land down Riverside Drive to the Pearl River. I don't know if you've gone down Riverside Drive, but that was alone. And at the back of this land, there was a farm. We had crops growing, they had cows. Even until the 1960s, one of the things you could take at Belhaven for your PE class was horseback riding, because we had a stable and horses there. And we had these beautiful bridle paths, bridle for the horses to ride around in. And over those bridle paths grew this white rose that was called the Cherokee Rose. And I just want to mention that to you because when we sing the Belhaven alma mater, when we sing our song, it talks about the Cherokee Rose, and people don't know what that means. And that's because we owned all that land and had these bridle paths that were covered with these trellises with roses, and people would ride and play out there. So you wonder, why don't we have that now? Well, when the war came, people were not giving money to help colleges. So the college had to sell that land in order to keep the college going. So, now we wish we could buy it back, but, we can't. It's too valuable property, I'm sure. But anyway, that saved Belhaven for the next generation, and that we did have all of that land there. Our next president was Dr. Crow, and he was here 4 or 5 years. And then he was followed by Dr. Cooper, and you see I have a little star by Dr. Cooper's name. Dr. Cooper was the vice president of Belhaven for many, many years. And there is a room named for him. You may have been in the Cooper room. His picture is in there. And he was the acting president for only less than a year while they were choosing a new president. So he's not always listed as the president, but he was for that little time. And Dr. Cooper was a great, great scholar of Greek and Sanskrit. And at the time he was at Belhaven, he was one of only 2 people in America that was a Sanskrit scholar. That was the language of India from which other languages came. And if you notice his portrait, he has on a Phi Beta Kappa key. And I think he's our only faculty member that was a Phi Beta Kappa, so you would want to know about Dr. Cooper. I took Greek from Dr. Cooper and thought in his latter years and thought he was a most wonderful person, so we want other people to know about him. His children and grandchildren are doctors and lawyers in this town. And then he was followed by Dr. Cleland, who had been a principal and who most especially wanted Belhaven to get the highest accreditation from the Southern Association, and we did get it under his leadership. And he built, under his leadership, they built many of the buildings here. They built the gym, the boys' dorms, the girls' dorms that we have, the library, the cafeteria that we had before we had the student center. He was here 17 years. And we've just recently named the Cube down there for Dr. Cleland. Some of you may pass by it and you see. And I thought that was a real appropriate thing to name that little building in the center for him, because he rescued that little building. At first he made it the student center, because we didn't have a big one then, and it had the grill and the post office and things in it. And then he made it the art department. And so he was an artist as well as a leader, and I thought that was really good. So when you go by there, you'll see his name on that building. And then he was followed by Dr. Kennedy. And Dr. Kennedy was a businessman who, of note, and had taught at LSU and had established his own business. And he was very much interested in helping Belhaven become a real business school, which it has become. And he was here 8 years. But why we note him is he was a Belhaven graduate in the 60s. So he was our first president who was also a graduate of Belhaven. And then he was followed by Newt Wilson, who also had graduated from Belhaven. In fact, those 2 men graduated in the same class, and then they both got to be president. Newt Wilson was always so interesting to me because he was first here as a student. He was a student body president. Then he came back as a professor. Then he came back as the dean of students. Then he came back as the vice president. Then he came back as the president. He kind of went through every job you could have here. And they're going to dedicate a building to him this fall, and I think that's, it's real appropriate. And then he was followed by Dr. Fredericks, who you know as the dean and provost. And he was the president for just 5 or 6 months until they chose a new president, who is Dr. Parrott. And now Dr. Parrott is proud to say he's the 2nd longest president. Now, he hopes to stay as long as Dr. Gillespie, and I hope to see him stay that long, because that means I can live to be real old. Now, we have many degrees at Belhaven. Our first degrees were just a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science. But then we have added to that master's degrees. The first master's degrees were in education, a Master's of Education, or an MAT, a Master of Arts in Teaching. But now we have many master's degrees in business. And I didn't put all those down because it's in leadership or in social work or just all kinds of masters that you get through the business department. And just this year now, we're opening up a new degree, which is a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And we're up here on the new floor for all the nurses, and we think that's going to be a real outstanding thing, that Belhaven will be turning out lots of nurses, because we have turned out lots and lots of doctors. So I'm glad we're going to do some nurses. Now, I always like to tell you about the teams here at Belhaven. When it was an all-girls school, of course, there were no big teams. But as our men came, we began to have our sports teams. And our first team that really made a splash was our basketball team. And in the 70s, they did really well. They went to the national NAIA tournament. One of our boys was drafted by the 76ers in the NBA. And we played Jackson State and beat them in the third overtime. It was the most exciting thing. I clapped so hard I broke blood vessels in my hand. And, when we first had our basketball team, we were just getting started, you know, and we didn't win for a while. And then one day we beat Millsaps, and the president declared a holiday. It's the only declared holiday we've ever had at Belhaven, was when the day we beat Millsaps. And then we beat them every year for the next 18 years. So remember that. Then our next team that came up was the baseball team, and our baseball team has done amazingly all these years, won all kind of regional and district awards, and have done really well and still continue to do well. Our coach for a long time was Coach McLeod, and that name might sound familiar to you because you've seen McLeod Field named for him. And he was the coach all those years for nothing. He was a gentleman farmer and did not want pay. He just loved baseball, and he loved the Belhaven men who played for him. And one time when we were doing a cookbook, we asked all the faculty to give us a recipe, and he gave us one of his recipes that he cooked for the baseball boys. And it started off with 5 pounds of cornmeal. Can you imagine? So I would not, how many hundreds of people he was cooking for. And then our next team to get real big nationally was the tennis team. I didn't put their name down here, but in the 1970s and 80s, we either had a winner in the singles or the doubles every year. And some of our tennis players are well known today. And our tennis players came from Canada, South Africa, Australia. I don't know how they heard about Belhaven, but they heard that you could play outdoors most of the year, you know, and they wanted to come here. And some of our boys who won those tournaments, the NAIA tournaments in the 70s, went on to coach tennis, and one of them was Billy Chadwick, who then was in the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame for being the coach at Ole Miss and helping them win more tennis games than any other place in America. But he was originally a Belhaven graduate here. Then we got soccer, and after the boys started playing soccer, we won a national championship, and then 20 years later, 2 years ago, we won another national championship in soccer. Now, I haven't forgotten the ladies. As time went on, we had all of these sports for ladies too, in basketball and tennis and volleyball and cross country. It seems like, you know, when we get a list of all the people who are athletes, it is a large number of them. So we know there are many sports out there for everyone, and many have won great acclaim. But the last one that we mentioned there is football. Dr. Parrott especially wanted us to have a football team, and that had not been our reputation at Belhaven because we had started off as a girls' school, even though we had been a boys' school now as long as we were a girls' school. He was determined, and so in just a short time we were doing well in football. And what I think is real interesting is that we have 2 boys that played football for Belhaven that are now in the NFL. One's in San Francisco and one's in Seattle, and who would have ever thought they would, you know, recruit anybody from a school that was as small as we are. So it just proves that you never know. Great things come out of small places. We think that about Belhaven for many things, but also in our sports. Now, Belhaven was noted for many things in the past, and one of those was the arts. And under this, I have listed a lot of famous firsts, but one of the first things that Belhaven did that we are so proud of is Miss Caldwell, for whom one of our dorms is named, thought up the idea of the singing Christmas tree. I hope many of you have seen it. If not, that you will see it. And this was a performance where her choir would stand on a platform shaped like a tree outside and sing Christmas carols for the neighborhood. Now, the first singing tree was at where the lagoon is, in between those columns. You know, they put the tree there, and 60 people could stand on the platform they built there. And the lights would reflect in the lagoon, and then people would just stand out in the yard and on that street all the way down. And this started in 1933. We have had the singing tree for more than 80 years now. In the 1960s, when Mr. Ford came to be the choir director, he thought it could be bigger, and so he moved the tree to the bowl so there'd be a lot more space for the people to sit. And so they made it bigger. I think 100 can stand on that platform now. They have had as many as 120 singers on the tree. It varies from 90 to 120, I think, depending on what year it is. But it's usually one of the first events of the Christmas season. It's Belhaven's gift to the community. And when it was in its 40th year, it was featured on Southern Living. And after that, Belhaven got hundreds of letters asking, how did you build that platform, and how did you do this, and you know, what was the logistics of it? So that now you find singing trees in many churches, in many schools, but Belhaven was the very first. And several years ago, there was a big national article declaring that Belhaven was the first, and this was their idea. It was Miss Caldwell's idea. Some of you will be taking drama, and you may have as your professor Maxwell. He's going to be a professor here. And Maxwell, who is known for all of his drama, is the grandson of Miss Nunn, who thought up our singing tree. He doesn't tell people that, but I thought I'd tell you. Now, Belhaven always was noted for its music. It not only did the tree, but the first teacher ever to have a license to teach music in Mississippi was a Belhaven graduate. It was in 1896. And since then, of course, there have been hundreds of people who've taught music, but we're very proud of that. Belhaven started the Jackson Symphony Orchestra, and the first two directors, in fact, all the directors of the Symphony Orchestra, except the one they have now, has been a Belhaven faculty person. Belhaven also started the Mississippi Opera Guild, and many other musical sororities and fraternities were started by Belhaven, because our music department was really outstanding in the beginning, and is, I think, even more outstanding now. And we'll let them tell you, all about their accomplishments, but there are many. And then we have the visual arts, which is, painting and sculpture. We've always had great people come from our art department. Marie Hull is considered the #1 Mississippi artist. She was a Belhaven graduate and eventually lived most of her life down on Belhaven Street. And I think soon they're going to have some kind of special building here to honor her and show her work. But many other schools honor her. For instance, Hines Junior College, they call their art department the Marie Hull Art Department, but she was our graduate and also taught here. And then Mary Catherine Liacono McCravey, also her family helped give us the Student Center. She is the second, I think, maybe most famous artist we have. And she, too, was a Belhaven graduate, as was a lot of people from her family. And the art department will be glad to tell you all their other famous artists. And then we have begun our theater, and our theater department with the Joshua Scott and other groups have gone all over the world to perform, and I assume they're going to have some more outstanding productions. But then dance is one of the big majors here now, and our dance department goes somewhere every year and performs. Some of you may be some of those people, and you know how well they are received and how great people appreciate their work. And starting this year, you can get your Master of Fine Arts in Dance, which is really equivalent to a PhD in dance. And so we think that is a wonderful thing for Belhaven. Now, Belhaven is one of only 33 schools in the whole United States that gives you a major in all 4 of these arts. And so we're real proud of that. Now, I have listed here, and some of you may be interested in that we were the first integrated college in Mississippi. And you might think, well, you've never heard that. But it is true. And when colleges were organized, they have a charter. And the charter says for whom this school is built. And like Ole Miss said, their school's built for white people, and Jackson State said their school was built for black people. And that's in the charter. And then in the 60s, when integration came, the schools had to decide when and how to change their charter. Well, Belhaven never had that in their charter. Our charter said at the beginning, we were a school for young ladies. And then in 1954, it said we were a school for young ladies and young men. And Belhaven's charter has never said anything about race or nationality or anything. So we are truly the only integrated from the beginning school. And when other schools were deciding whether to integrate or not, in the early 1970s, Belhaven already had a little black girl who was our student body president. And it was not making the news, but it was here. And so I thought you would be interested in that because people are always asking that question. Now, our alumni are just in many fields that will make you proud. And in the beginning, the majority of the people who came to Belhaven, because they were women, majored in education. So till 1960-something, half of everybody who graduated from Belhaven was certified to teach. It's still one of the bigger majors, but it's not the biggest major at all now. Then the next largest major became business, and it's still a real big major. I think now dance and sports administration, or some of those have moved up to have more people in them than those departments. But out in the field, we have many people who are ministers. Not all the early men who came here, but many of the early men who came to Belhaven came because there was no other Presbyterian school in Mississippi, and they wanted to be Presbyterian ministers. So we have many ministers in the field from the 60s, 70s, and 80s who graduated in those years, and lots of missionaries. And a lot of our people who majored in other areas became missionaries too. Sometimes I put up a map and put a little point on all the places where people I have taught are now or have been missionaries, and it's on every continent except Antarctica, and I don't think anybody wants to teach down there. But we are real proud that our people are in missions everywhere. But we have many people who are in medicine. A new doctor came through the emergency room when I also work at the hospital, at the Baptist hospital on the weekends. And this man came through the emergency room, and the nurses said to me, "Who is that?" And I told them, and they said, "What does he do?" And I said, "I don't know. Last time I saw him, he was a basketball player." And one time we had a basketball player here who was our star basketball player. He went to med school, and he was the top scholar in the med school, and one of top 20 in the whole United States. And later, both his son and his daughter came to Belhaven. All my stories are true. I don't always say the names because I don't know who you are. But if you want to know about any of your parents who may have come here, I probably have a story about them and what they did when they were here. Because all of our people who've turned out to be doctors and lawyers, we have many people who are in the law, we have some judges, we have some marshals, we have some FBI people. One time this man came up here and he said, "I want to see Miss Quinn." They came and got me and they said, "Miss Quinn, the FBI is out there for you." So I went out there, and this little man picked me up and swung me around. He was just one of my students from Belhaven, who was the FBI director for the state. So we're real proud of all of our people who've gone into this. One time, the sheriff in Pearl, the sheriff in Ridgeland, the chief of police in Jackson, and the chief of police in Madison County were all 4 boys that I had taught here at Belhaven. And they were all in the law enforcement at the same time. So I felt pretty safe driving around, knowing they were in charge of every county around here. So our people have gone out into those fields, and many into public service, and many into coaching. I know some of our people are real interested in that, and a lot are into the arts. And sometimes you can't tell by what they've done at Belhaven whether they're going to be these outstanding people, because sometimes they do funny things, when they're here. One time we had this boy running for student body president, and he flew over Belhaven in a helicopter and dropped out leaflets that said, "The Lord wants you to vote for Joel Richardson." and he won. And he's a Baptist preacher. I'm sure he doesn't tell his children he did that. And they asked me not to tell you all the funny things people have done while they are students here, because we don't want to give you any ideas. You have to think up your own. But if you want to come, I can tell you some of the clever things people have thought and done, while they were here, that makes it real fun and interesting while we're here. Well, we are the Blazers, and we like that name. We're real proud of it. And we know our motto is not to be ministered unto, but to minister. And I like to think that the reason we chose the Blazers is because it's a torch. It's a torch you pass from one generation to the other, and you're going to be passing your torch to the next generation. And also, I like that because I think it means if you've got the torch, you can let your light shine. And we're hoping that's what all the people who come to Belhaven will do, that they will hear and know the light of Christ, and then they will go out and let it shine. Now, if you would like to ask me some questions about Belhaven and its history, if I can, I will answer them. Do you have anything you've thought up you might want to know, what something is or means around here, why we have it? Used to, when anybody got engaged, the boys would pick them up from the dining room and carry them and throw them in the lagoon. You cannot do that anymore, because the lagoon used to be 5 feet deep and it's only 2 feet deep now, and it would hurt you. But that used to be a big thing. You know who just had got proposed, because there they'd be going. 6 big boys would be taking them, to the lagoon. If you were a girl and were initiated into some group, you had to get in the lagoon, sing the alma mater around the fountain. There are pictures of people doing that, including myself. But you don't do that now, because now the water is just 2 feet deep. But sometimes people would get upset and throw things in the fountain, and we'd have to drain it and look for engagement rings and other things that people threw in there. Or sometimes people would put color in it, green for St. Patrick's Day or red for Valentine's. But don't do that, because it bubbles up all down the road in these colors. But should it snow, be sure and go take a picture of the fountain with icicles coming up of it. That's always lovely. Or slide down the bowl. People used to take the trays out of the cafeteria and be sleds down the bowl, and that's still allowed. So you can pray for snow. Okay, do you have any questions you want to ask about anybody or any person?
How did we get the Center for the Arts? Like where the chapel is, how did we get that building?
It is a wonderful story. That was a church. It was called Riverside Methodist Church. And the people were slowly moving from this, who belonged there. And they had money to run it, but they didn't have many people to come. I guess people were going out to the suburbs, to the churches. And so one day Dr. Parrott was riding by there, and he went in to see the pastor, and he said, I just came in to see if y'all would like to sell this building to Belhaven. And the preacher said, well, we might. And they did. For for about 1/10 of what it would have cost to build it. It was just a miracle. And so Dr. Parrott invited all that church to come to our first chapel, and they only took up one row all the way across with that church. But they said they were so thrilled because they built that church and dedicated it to the worship of the Lord, and they wanted to know it would still be there. They didn't want it to be bought by some business or something, or somebody do something unusual with it, you know. And in that building where you go to chapel are these wonderful stained glass windows that were designed by Carl Wolf, who was a famous artist in our time, and they cost a fortune. That the people who built that church had a lot of money. They just didn't have a lot of people eventually to come there. They either moved or died away. But we could never have afforded all of those beautiful stained glass windows. I hope you appreciate them when you look at them. And you know, any stained glass window that's got red in it means that had to be made with gold. You know, first glass is just clear. And then if you put something in it, you can turn it blue or green or whatever. And if you want to turn glass red, you have to put gold in it as you are making it. So most churches only have a little piece or two of red in their stained glass windows because it's real expensive. And just look at those windows. You'll see how much red is in them, so you'll know this is really a wealth that we have here looking at these windows. But that was a good question. And we wondered if people, we used to go to a building that was where the driveway is now that goes to Gillespie. There was a huge white building there called the Fine Arts Building, and it would only seat 600, and we had need for more than that. So, but that's why we were looking for another place. And so we were so glad, you know, that we could have that, and it would really be a worshipful place to be. And because it had been a church, it had all this space that could be the art and the theater department and the music department, you know. And those things were in our other fine arts building, but they didn't have the space that we have over there. So we did think that was a wonderful opening for us to have that building. What other question might you have?
Who are Stuart and Dixie Irby?
Who are they? Okay. The Irbys were a really wonderful old-time family in Mississippi. And the first Mr. Irby was named Stuart C. Irby Sr. And he gave us the money to build this building in 1955. But he never wanted anybody to know he gave it. He gave money to Belhaven every year, thousands and thousands every year. But he gave it without, he didn't want any acclaim. Well, when he died, his children decided they could put his name on the building. So it says Stuart C. Irby. Well, then his son was Stuart C. Irby Jr., and he did continue to give money to Belhaven like his father had. And he said that he would give Belhaven his life insurance so that when he died, the college would get his life insurance, which was something like $5 million. So when he died, and Belhaven got $5 million, and they built the art building, and they named it for Mr. Irby and his wife. Mr. Irby, who left us his will, and his wife, Betsy. Her real name was Elizabeth, I think, but she always went by Betsy. And so they wanted to name it for them. And I know people do think it's funny that we have two buildings named Irby, but that's why, you know, because that was such an unusual and great gift. Now, when you get rich and have $1 million, leave some of it to Belhaven. We did have some boys graduate several years ago, and within 5 years, they had made more than $1 million. These 3 boys, they thought up something new in computers, the Bumgard Corporation. And so some of you may do that. So remember, we might need a new building. You can bring it to us.
What was your favorite thing as being a student at Belhaven?
Well, I guess I loved living in the dorm. I had, you know, I was from Jackson, and I could have gone way away to school, but my family didn't want me to. So the fact that I got to come live in the dorm life was real fun to me. But I liked all my classes too. We had wonderful, wonderful professors when I was here. I would like to tell stories about lots of them. But just last Friday, I had lunch with my college roommate. So that still is. Those are still lasting friendships, and I would have never known her because she's from North Carolina. So it's always good to meet new people and establish those. What other questions might you have? Well, I wanted to tell you that the education department has moved downstairs, and my room is 106 down there. And if you have any questions or if I can help you in any way, I hope you will come by. I know some of you may go into education, many of you won't, but you can still take child psychology because everybody needs that. If you don't have children, you were one, and you can understand yourself better. That's my commercial. Thank you.